The morning mist hung heavy over Windsor Castle as palace guards noticed something that would shake the very foundations of royal protocol. What started as a routine security check turned into a medical emergency that had doctors racing through ancient corridors. But when 8-year-old Princess Charlotte finally spoke, her innocent words would reveal a truth so profound that it left seasoned royal staff, medical professionals, and even her own parents speechless. This is the untold story of how a young princess's simple explanation changed everything anyone thought they knew about royal childhood, family bonds, and the hidden struggles behind palace walls. The autumn morning began like countless others at Windsor Castle, with the changing of the guard ceremony proceeding with military precision. Staff members moved through their well-rehearsed routines, polishing already gleaming surfaces and ensuring every detail met the exacting standards expected within these historic walls. The castle had housed British royalty for nearly 1,000 years, and tradition demanded that everything function like clockwork. Head of security James Morrison had been protecting the royal family for over 2 decades. His weathered face and steady demeanor had earned him respect throughout the palace hierarchy. That Tuesday morning, as he conducted his routine inspection of the family quarters, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The Prince and Princess of Wales had departed early for separate official engagements, leaving their 3 children under the careful supervision of their trusted nanny and household staff. Princess Charlotte, at 8 years old, was known throughout the palace as a spirited child with an infectious laugh and an uncanny ability to brighten even the most formal occasions. Staff members often remarked on her natural charm and the way she could effortlessly switch between playful mischief and royal composure. Her brothers, Prince George and Prince Louis, were equally beloved, but Charlotte possessed a unique quality that drew people to her like moths to a flame. The trouble began during the mid-morning hours when Charlotte's tutor, Mrs. Elizabeth Hartwell, arrived for the princess's scheduled lesson. Mrs. Hartwell, a distinguished educator who had taught royal children for 15 years, prided herself on punctuality and preparation. She had planned an engaging session on British history, complete with interactive maps and period costumes to make learning enjoyable for her young charge. However, when Mrs. Hartwell knocked on Charlotte's door at precisely 10 o'clock, there was no response. The silence was unusual, as Charlotte typically called out cheerfully whenever someone arrived for their lessons. After waiting several minutes and receiving no answer, Mrs. Hartwell gently turned the ornate door handle and stepped inside. The room was empty, but everything appeared normal. Charlotte's bed was neatly made, her schoolbooks were arranged on her desk, and her favorite stuffed animals sat in their usual places. The large windows that overlooked the castle gardens were slightly open, allowing the crisp autumn air to circulate through the space. Mrs. Hartwell checked the adjoining bathroom and small sitting area, but found no sign of the princess. Assuming Charlotte might have wandered to one of her favorite spots within the family quarters, Mrs. Hartwell began a systematic search. She checked the library where Charlotte often curled up with books about animals and adventure stories. The cozy reading nook remained undisturbed, with yesterday's book still open to the page where Charlotte had stopped reading. The small kitchen area where the children sometimes helped prepare simple snacks was equally empty. As minutes turned into nearly an hour, Mrs. Hartwell's concern grew. She contacted Maria Santos, the family's head nanny, who had been with the Wales family since George's birth. Maria's warm Spanish accent and motherly nature had made her an integral part of the household, and she knew each child's habits and preferences better than anyone outside the immediate family. Maria immediately launched into action, coordinating with other household staff to conduct a thorough search of the family's private areas. They checked every room, every closet, and every possible hiding spot where a creative 8-year-old might conceal herself. The children's playroom, usually filled with laughter and scattered toys, sat eerily quiet. Charlotte's art supplies remained organized on her easel, with yesterday's painting of a rainbow over Windsor Castle still drying nearby. The palace's vast size, with its numerous corridors, hidden passages, and centuries-old architecture, presented unique challenges for anyone attempting to locate a missing person. Even experienced staff members occasionally found themselves momentarily disoriented within the maze-like structure. However, Charlotte had grown up within these walls and knew them as well as any adult resident. As the search expanded beyond the family quarters, palace security became involved. James Morrison personally took charge of the operation, his years of experience guiding him through protocols designed for various emergency scenarios. While a missing royal child wasn't unprecedented, it was certainly serious enough to warrant immediate and comprehensive action. Security cameras throughout the public areas of the castle were reviewed frame by frame. The footage showed Charlotte having breakfast with her brothers earlier that morning, laughing at something Prince Louis had said while he struggled with his porridge. She appeared happy and completely normal, showing no signs of distress or unusual behavior that might explain her current absence. The grounds surrounding Windsor Castle span hundreds of acres, including formal gardens, wooded areas, and the famous long walks stretching toward the distant statue of King George III. Staff members familiar with Charlotte's preferences focused their outdoor search on areas where she was known to enjoy spending time. The rose garden, where she often helped the groundskeepers tend to the flowers, was carefully examined, as was the small pond where she liked to watch the swans and ducks. Meanwhile, inside the castle, the search had expanded to include areas typically off-limits to the children. Ancient storage rooms filled with historical artifacts, and used chambers that had housed royalty centuries earlier, and even the lower levels where practical castle operations took place were methodically checked. Each space yielded nothing but growing anxiety among the staff. By early afternoon, nearly 4 hours after Charlotte's absence was first discovered, the situation had escalated beyond routine protocol. Additional security personnel were called in, and discreet inquiries were made to determine if anyone had observed anything unusual during the morning hours. The castle's daily operations continued as normal to avoid attracting unwanted attention, but beneath the surface, tension was mounting. James Morrison made the difficult decision to contact the Prince and Princess of Wales, interrupting their official duties to inform them of the situation. Both parents immediately began making arrangements to return to Windsor Castle, their public schedules suddenly becoming secondary to their missing daughter's welfare. The palace's medical staff, led by Dr. Sarah Thompson, was placed on standby as a precautionary measure. Dr. Thompson had served as the royal family's physician for nearly a decade and was well-versed in handling both routine medical needs and emergency situations. Her calm professionalism had earned the trust of both the adult royals and their children, making her an essential part of the household support system. As afternoon shadows began lengthening across the castle grounds, the search took on an increasingly urgent tone. Staff members who had initially assumed Charlotte was simply playing an elaborate game of hide and seek now faced the reality that something more serious might have occurred. The palace's carefully maintained atmosphere of controlled elegance was giving way to barely contained anxiety. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Thomas Mitchell, a maintenance worker who had been repairing heating systems in the castle's older sections, mentioned to security that he had heard what sounded like quiet crying coming from somewhere near the North Tower earlier in the day. He had assumed it was one of the staff members dealing with a personal matter and hadn't thought to investigate further. The North Tower, one of Windsor Castle's most historic sections, contained rooms that dated back to medieval times. While some areas have been modernized for contemporary use, others remained largely unchanged from their original construction. The tower's stone walls, narrow staircases, and small chambers created a labyrinthine environment that could easily confuse someone unfamiliar with its layout. James Morrison personally led a team to the North Tower, their footsteps echoing off the ancient stone as they climbed the winding staircase. The afternoon light, filtering through narrow windows, cast long shadows that seemed to dance with each movement. As they reached the upper levels, Morrison held up his hand, signaling for silence. Their Barely audible above the sound of wind whistling through the old stones, came the soft sound of labored breathing. Second part the sound led them to a small chamber tucked away behind what appeared to be a solid stone wall. Morrison's experienced, I recognized the subtle signs of a hidden door, likely dating back centuries to when such concealed passages were essential for royal security. The mechanism still functioned smoothly despite its age, swinging open to reveal a narrow space that had clearly been discovered and explored by curious young royals over the generations. Inside the hidden chamber, Princess Charlotte sat huddled in the corner, her usually bright demeanor replaced by an expression of pain and confusion that immediately alarmed the security team. Her normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, her face pale, and, most concerning of all, she appeared to be having difficulty breathing properly. The sight of the normally vibrant 8-year-old in such distress sent an immediate chill through everyone present. Morrison approached slowly, his voice gentle despite his urgent concern. Charlotte looked up at him with eyes that seemed older than her years, filled with a mixture of relief at being found and something else that the experienced security chief couldn't immediately identify. When she tried to speak, her voice came out as barely more than a whisper, forcing Morrison to lean closer to hear her words. Within minutes, the castle's emergency protocols were activated with unprecedented speed. Dr. Sarah Thompson arrived at the North Tower carrying her medical bag and accompanied by a team of palace medical staff. The narrow stone staircase that had stood for centuries suddenly seemed inadequate for the urgent medical equipment being carefully transported to Charlotte's location. The princess's condition appeared to be deteriorating rather than improving now that she had been found. Her breathing became more labored, and she seemed unable to maintain a normal conversation despite being conscious and alert. Dr. Thompson's initial examination revealed symptoms that didn't fit any obvious pattern, prompting her to call for additional medical equipment and consider the possibility of transferring Charlotte to a full hospital facility. The Prince and Princess of Wales arrived at Windsor Castle within an hour of being contacted, their official duties abandoned as they raced to be with their daughter. The normally composed royal couple showed visible signs of distress as they were briefed on the situation and rushed to Charlotte's side. Seeing their daughter in such an unusual state, surrounded by medical equipment in the ancient stone chamber, created a surreal scene that contrasted sharply with typical royal family life. Prince William's face reflected the internal struggle between his role as a future king and his primary identity as a concerned father. Catherine's maternal instincts were fully engaged as she knelt beside Charlotte, speaking softly to her daughter while Dr. Thompson continued her examination. The medieval setting seemed to emphasize the timeless nature of parental worry, regardless of titles or circumstances. Charlotte's brothers, Prince George and Prince Louis, were kept with their nanny in another part of the castle to shield them from the developing crisis. However, their questions about their sister's whereabouts required careful handling from Maria Santos, who had to balance honesty with age-appropriate information while managing her own concern about Charlotte's condition. As medical equipment continued arriving at the North Tower, the logistics of providing modern health care in a medieval setting presented unique challenges. Portable monitors, oxygen supplies, and other essential devices had to be carefully positioned within the confined space while maintaining access for the medical team. The ancient stones that had witnessed centuries of royal history now served as the backdrop for 21st century emergency medicine. Dr. Thompson's examination revealed that Charlotte's symptoms were not immediately life-threatening, but they were certainly unusual and concerning enough to warrant extensive medical attention. The princess's vital signs showed irregularities that suggested some form of stress response, but the underlying cause remained unclear. Blood tests were ordered, and arrangements were made to conduct more comprehensive examinations in a properly equipped medical facility. The decision was made to transfer Charlotte to a private medical wing within the castle that had been specially equipped for royal family healthcare needs. The transfer required careful coordination between security, medical personnel, and castle staff to ensure both Charlotte's safety and the privacy that royal medical situations demanded. News of the incident was kept strictly confidential to prevent unwanted media attention during a vulnerable time. As Charlotte was being prepared for transfer, she managed to speak more clearly to her parents for the first time since being discovered. Her words, though still quiet and interrupted by occasional difficulty breathing, began to reveal the first clues about what had actually transpired during her hours in the hidden chamber. However, her initial explanations only deepened the mystery surrounding her condition and her decision to hide in such an unusual location. The princess spoke about feeling different and needing to find a place where she could be herself without anyone watching or expecting her to act in a certain way. Her words suggested a level of self-awareness and emotional complexity that surprised even her parents, who thought they understood their daughter's inner world. The hidden chamber had apparently provided her with a sense of security and privacy that she felt unable to find anywhere else within the palace environment. Dr. Thompson noted that Charlotte's symptoms seemed to intensify whenever she was asked direct questions about her experience or when too many people were present in the room. This observation led to a modification in the medical approach, with efforts made to create a calmer, less overwhelming environment for continued examination and treatment. The medical team's working theory began to center around the possibility that Charlotte had experienced some form of anxiety or panic episode that had physical manifestations. However, the specific triggers and the sophisticated reasoning behind her choice of hiding place suggested a level of emotional and psychological development that warranted careful consideration and potentially specialized consultation. As evening approached, Charlotte's condition had stabilized somewhat, but she remained under close medical observation. The hidden chamber in the North Tower was thoroughly examined for any environmental factors that might have contributed to her symptoms, but nothing obvious was discovered. The space was clean, well ventilated despite its age, and showed no signs of structural issues that might affect someone's health. The palace staff involved in the search and rescue operation began providing detailed accounts of the day's events to help medical professionals and the royal family understand the complete timeline. Each person's observations were carefully documented, creating a comprehensive picture of Charlotte's disappearance and the circumstances surrounding her discovery. Maria Santos shared her observations about Charlotte's behavior in recent weeks, noting subtle changes in the princess's usual patterns that hadn't seemed significant at the time, but might now provide important context. Charlotte had been asking more questions about privacy, spending more time alone with books, and showing increased interest in the castle's history and architecture. Mrs. Hartwell contributed her perspective as Charlotte's tutor, describing the princess's academic performance and social interactions during their lessons. Charlotte had always been an exceptionally bright student, but recent sessions had revealed a growing sophistication in her thinking about complex topics, including personal identity, family expectations, and the unique challenges of royal life. The combination of medical observations and staff insights began painting a picture of a remarkably perceptive young girl who was grappling with concepts and pressures that would challenge individuals much older than herself. The hidden chamber had apparently represented more than just a place to hide. It had become a sanctuary where she could process difficult emotions and thoughts without the constant awareness of her public role. As night fell over Windsor Castle, Charlotte remained stable, but still under careful medical supervision. The day's events had revealed layers of complexity in what had initially appeared to be a simple case of a missing child. The princess's explanation, when it finally came in full, would prove to be more profound and startling than anyone had anticipated. The ancient walls of Windsor Castle had witnessed countless royal dramas over the centuries, but the events of that October day would stand out as particularly significant for what they revealed about the intersection of tradition, family, and the unique pressures faced by even the youngest members of the royal family. Third part, the following morning, brought a sense of cautious optimism as Charlotte's physical symptoms had largely subsided overnight. Dr. Thompson's round-the-clock monitoring had revealed that the princess's vital signs had returned to normal ranges, and her breathing had improved significantly. However, the medical team remained puzzled by the rapid onset and equally rapid resolution of symptoms that had initially caused such serious concern. Charlotte appeared more alert and responsive than she had been since her discovery in the North Tower. The color had returned to her cheeks, and she was able to eat a light breakfast without difficulty. However, Dr. Thompson noticed that the 8-year-old seemed to be carefully considering her words before speaking, as if she were weighing each response for its potential impact on those around her. The Prince and Princess of Wales had maintained a constant presence at their daughter's bedside, taking turns reading to her from her favorite books and engaging in quiet conversations about topics that seemed to bring her comfort. Their parental instincts told them that Charlotte's crisis involved more than physical symptoms, and they were determined to create an environment where she felt safe to share whatever had triggered her distressing experience. Dr. Thompson had consulted with several specialists during the night, including child psychologists who were familiar with the unique pressures faced by royal children. The consensus among the medical professionals was that Charlotte had likely experienced what could best be described as an overwhelming emotional episode that had manifested in physical symptoms. However, the sophistication of her reasoning in seeking out the hidden chamber suggested a level of self-awareness that warranted careful and respectful exploration. As Charlotte became more communicative, she began sharing details about her experience that provided crucial insights into her emotional state and the events that had led to her disappearance. Her explanation unfolded gradually, with each revelation adding depth to the understanding of what had transpired in the hidden chamber and why she had felt compelled to seek such an unusual refuge. The princess described waking up that morning with an overwhelming sense of being watched and evaluated in everything she did. The feeling wasn't new, she explained, but had been growing stronger in recent weeks. Charlotte spoke about constantly being aware of how she walked, how she spoke, how she held her hands, and how she appeared to others. The pressure to maintain perfect royal composure had begun to feel suffocating to someone who was still, at her core, simply an 8-year-old child. Her words revealed a remarkably mature understanding of her unique position within the royal family and British society. Charlotte described feeling as though she were always performing a role rather than simply being herself. The hidden chamber had appealed to her because it represented the only space she could think of where no one could see her, judge her, or expect her to behave according to royal protocol. What made Charlotte's explanation particularly striking was her articulation of concepts that many adults struggle to understand and express. She spoke about the difference between her public self and her private thoughts, about the weight of expectations that seemed to grow heavier with each passing month, and about her desire to find moments where she could simply exist without the constant awareness of her royal identity. The 8-year-old princess revealed that she had been exploring various parts of Windsor Castle for months, looking for places where she could have privacy and solitude. The discovery of the hidden chamber had felt like finding a secret world where she could escape the pressures of royal life. She had visited the space several times before, always briefly, and always returning to her regular activities without anyone noticing her absence. However, on the morning of her disappearance, Charlotte had felt particularly overwhelmed by what she described as pretending to be perfect all the time. The hidden chamber had beckoned as a refuge where she could stop performing and simply be herself. What she hadn't anticipated was how the combination of emotional stress and the confined space would affect her physically. Charlotte's description of her time in the chamber painted a picture of a young person grappling with profound questions about identity, authenticity, and the nature of public life. She had spent hours thinking about who she really was versus who everyone expected her to be. The physical symptoms that had alarmed the medical team had apparently developed as her emotional distress intensified. The princess's ability to articulate these complex concepts left the adults around her both impressed and concerned. Dr. Thompson noted that Charlotte's level of introspection and self-awareness was remarkable for someone her age, but it also suggested that she was processing psychological pressures that could be challenging even for mature individuals. Prince William and Catherine found themselves confronting the reality that their daughter was experiencing the unique burdens of royal life much earlier and more intensely than they had realized. Charlotte's explanation forced them to reconsider their assumptions about how their children were adapting to their extraordinary circumstances and what additional support might be necessary. The conversation with Charlotte continued throughout the day, with breaks to ensure she didn't become overwhelmed by the intensity of the discussion. Each session revealed additional layers of her thinking and provided insights into the sophisticated ways she had been trying to cope with pressures that most children never face. Charlotte spoke about watching her parents during public engagements and noticing how they seemed to transform into their official roles. She had been trying to develop her own version of this transformation, but found the process exhausting and increasingly difficult to maintain. The hidden chamber had represented a place where she could drop the royal facade entirely and simply be Charlotte without any titles or expectations. Her explanation also revealed the extent to which she had been observing and analyzing the behavior of adults around her. Charlotte had noticed patterns in how palace staff interacted with her differently than they did with other children, how cameras and public attention changed the dynamics of family outings, and how even casual conversations often carried underlying tensions related to her royal status. The 8-year-old's insights into these dynamics demonstrated a level of social intelligence that was both impressive and concerning to her parents and the medical team. They realized that Charlotte had been carrying the weight of these observations and the pressure of constantly managing her public persona without anyone recognizing the toll it was taking on her emotional well-being. As the day progressed, Charlotte's explanations began to address the specific triggers that had led to her disappearance. She described feeling particularly overwhelmed during breakfast when she had caught herself automatically adjusting her posture and speech patterns in response to the presence of staff members. The realization that she was constantly monitoring and modifying her behavior had triggered an intense desire to escape to a place where such performance wasn't necessary. The hidden chamber had provided the solitude she craved, but the emotional intensity of finally allowing herself to drop all pretenses had apparently triggered the physical symptoms that had caused such alarm. Charlotte described feeling as though she were finally able to breathe freely for the first time in months, but the relief had been accompanied by overwhelming emotions that she hadn't known how to process. Dr. Thompson's analysis of Charlotte's explanation suggested that the princess had experienced something similar to a panic attack, but one triggered by relief and emotional release rather than fear or anxiety. The confined space of the hidden chamber, combined with the intensity of her emotions, had created the perfect conditions for the physical symptoms that had necessitated medical intervention. The medical team began developing a comprehensive plan to help Charlotte learn healthier ways to manage the unique pressures of her position. This plan would need to address both her immediate needs and the long-term challenge of growing up in the public while maintaining her authentic self. Charlotte's remarkable explanation had transformed what initially appeared to be a simple medical emergency into a profound learning experience for everyone involved. Her words had illuminated aspects of royal childhood that were rarely discussed or even acknowledged, providing valuable insights that would influence how the family approached similar challenges in the future. Fourth part, the revelation of Charlotte's true experience sparked immediate changes throughout the royal household. The Prince and Princess of Wales recognized that their daughter's crisis represented something far more significant than a single episode of childhood distress. They were confronting evidence that their 8-year-old had been silently struggling with psychological burdens that adults often find difficult to manage. Dr. Thompson, working in consultation with child development specialists and experts in royal family dynamics, developed a comprehensive support strategy tailored specifically to Charlotte's unique circumstances. The plan acknowledged that traditional approaches to childhood anxiety and stress might need modification when dealing with a young person whose life inherently involved constant public scrutiny and formal expectations. The immediate focus centered on helping Charlotte develop healthy coping mechanisms for managing the pressures of royal life without losing her authentic self in the process. This involved creating designated private spaces within the family quarters where she could retreat when feeling overwhelmed, along with establishing clear boundaries between her public duties and personal time. Charlotte's explanation had highlighted the extent to which she had been internalizing expectations about royal behavior without anyone realizing the psychological impact. The family implemented new protocols that included regular check-ins with all three children about their emotional well-being, designed to identify and address similar issues before they reached crisis levels. The hidden chamber in the North Tower was preserved as Charlotte had found it, but with safety modifications to ensure that any future visits could be monitored for her protection. Rather than forbidding her from accessing this space that had provided psychological comfort, the family chose to integrate it into her support system while ensuring appropriate supervision. Palace staff received specialized training on recognizing signs of stress in royal children and understanding the unique challenges they face. The training emphasized the importance of allowing the children moments of genuine authenticity rather than constantly reinforcing formal behavior expectations. This represented a significant shift in traditional royal household management practices. Charlotte's brothers, Prince George and Prince Louis, were included in family discussions appropriate to their ages about the pressures they all faced and the importance of communication when feeling overwhelmed. The family recognized that Charlotte's experience likely reflected challenges that her siblings might also be encountering in their own ways. Educational approaches were modified to include explicit discussions about the nature of public life, the difference between private and public personas, and healthy ways to manage the constant awareness of being observed and evaluated. These conversations were designed to help all three children develop resilience and coping skills specific to their extraordinary circumstances. The tutoring staff, led by Mrs. Hartwell, incorporated new elements into the children's education that addressed emotional intelligence, stress management, and the historical context of royal childhood experiences. These lessons helped Charlotte understand that her struggles were not unique and that previous generations of royal children had faced similar challenges. Charlotte's relationship with her parents deepened as they worked together to understand and address the issues her crisis had revealed. The Prince and Princess of Wales made adjustments to their own schedules to ensure more unstructured family time where the children could simply be themselves without any formal expectations or protocols. The princess herself became an active participant in developing her support system. Her remarkable ability to articulate her experiences and insights made her a valuable partner in creating solutions rather than simply a passive recipient of adult interventions. This collaborative approach respected her intelligence while providing the guidance and protection she needed. Medical monitoring continued for several weeks to ensure that Charlotte's physical symptoms did not recur. Dr. Thompson noted significant improvements in all areas as the new support systems were implemented and the family dynamics evolved to better address the children's emotional needs alongside their royal obligations. The palace's approach to media management was also refined to provide additional protection for Charlotte and her siblings during their emotional development. This included more careful consideration of which events required their participation and ensuring that they had adequate recovery time between public appearances. Charlotte's explanation had revealed the sophisticated ways in which royal children observe and internalize adult behavior around them. This insight led to changes in how palace staff and family members interacted with the children, emphasizing authenticity and emotional availability rather than rigid formality during private moments. The crisis also prompted broader discussions within royal circles about the long-term psychological well-being of children born into public roles. Charlotte's experience provided valuable data that could inform approaches to royal childhood management for future generations. As weeks passed, Charlotte demonstrated remarkable resilience and growth. Her ability to communicate her needs and feelings improved dramatically, and she developed confidence in seeking support when experiencing stress or confusion. The hidden chamber evolved from a secret refuge born of desperation into a legitimate private space where she could process her thoughts and emotions safely. The educational value of Charlotte's experience extended beyond her immediate family. Child psychologists studying her case contributed to academic understanding of how children process public scrutiny and develop coping mechanisms for extraordinary circumstances. Her situation provided unique insights into childhood resilience and adaptation. The princess's recovery became a model for addressing similar challenges among children in high-profile families. Her articulate explanations and collaborative approach to finding solutions demonstrated the importance of respecting children's intelligence and including them as active participants in addressing their own psychological well-being. Prince William and Catherine's handling of the crisis was noted for its balance between protecting Charlotte's privacy and ensuring she received appropriate support. Their willingness to modify traditional approaches based on their daughter's specific needs demonstrated evolved parenting strategies adapted to contemporary understanding of child psychology. The medical team's multidisciplinary approach to Charlotte's care became a template for addressing complex childhood stress situations that combined physical symptoms with psychological factors. Dr. Thompson's documentation of the case contributed to professional literature on pediatric stress management in unique circumstances. Charlotte's story ultimately became one of triumph over adversity, demonstrating how a crisis could catalyze positive changes that strengthen family bonds and improve support systems. Her courage in articulating her struggles led to innovations in royal family practices that would benefit not only her own development, but also her siblings and future royal children. The hidden chamber in Windsor Castle's North Tower remained part of Charlotte's life, but transformed from a secret hiding place into a recognized sanctuary where she could safely retreat when needed. The ancient stones that had witnessed her crisis became witnesses to her recovery and growth. Months later, Charlotte's explanation continued to resonate throughout the royal household and beyond. Her words had open conversations about childhood authenticity, the psychology of public life, and the importance of providing children with spaces for genuine self-expression, even within highly structured environments. The 8-year-old princess had inadvertently become an advocate for emotional honesty and psychological well-being among children facing extraordinary circumstances. Her crisis had evolved into a catalyst for positive change, demonstrating how even difficult experiences could lead to stronger, more supportive family dynamics and better understanding of children's complex inner lives. Charlotte's journey from crisis to recovery illustrated the resilience of young people when provided with appropriate support, understanding, and respect for their intelligence and emotional capacity. Her story became a testament to the power of honest communication and the importance of creating safe spaces for authentic self-expression, regardless of the public roles individuals might be required to fulfill.